Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 66 of Days Gone By, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of classic cars, and this particular pick is actually the second variation of a model which we have talked about before, the Alpine A110. Now, the version which we already discussed is the premium. It's the obvious choice to go for. You have the visual upgrades, which are pretty nice. It's a premium, which helps a lot of people to decide whether or not to buy it over this version, and understandably most people would probably assume that it's the better car of the two. But is that actually the case? Well, consider what this one has to offer. For a start, this car is 40,000 credits cheaper. That is nothing to be sniffed at. You could buy this and a Supra, for instance, for roughly that kind of difference in price. Now, what you get for that is a 1.6 litre naturally aspirated engine, and it's actually more powerful in this form when fully tuned than the premium. The premium car has 259 horsepower, this one has 274. So not just a couple of horsepower difference, that's pretty significant. The torque is 195 foot-pounds on this particular car, and the weight is 649 kilos. Now that is incidentally slightly heavier than the premium, so they balance each other out in that kind of way, but still it is interesting to note the difference. Another very significant difference, and this might even be one of the most significant of all, is the difference between the cars when they are fully tuned in terms of their PP level. This car sits at 532 PP, whereas the premium sits at 549. Now, we already said it's a less powerful car, but the PP is significantly higher. So with all that being said, and it kind of trades blows with the premium version, better here, not as good there, how does it actually differ from that car in terms of performance around a track, on-road, maybe off-road as well? Is it quicker? Well, I would say that the handling is very different on this car compared to the premium. I actually prefer the handling on this car, if I'm honest, which I am, because the premium version is a little bit skittish, which isn't too surprising given that it's rear engine, rear wheel drive. This one can be, but when you tune this one in the right way with the suspension and the diff, it actually becomes basically like a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car in terms of the way it handles. It's very easy to drive. If anything, it actually has a little bit of understeer, which you very rarely see in a rear-engine rear-drive car, and the premium just doesn't handle like that. It doesn't handle badly, but it certainly doesn't handle like this car. Now, whether or not I would say that this car handles better is another question entirely. I prefer it, but my driving style certainly isn't for everyone. I like my cars to feel heavier through corners because I always prefer to deal with understeer rather than oversteer. If you've got a car that's constantly trying to spin out, that's just a little bit more annoying to me than a car that just happens to be a bit heavier, which you have to brake a bit earlier for. I would much rather deal with a car like that. So it very much depends on the kind of driver you are, the kind of car that you want to drive. Do you prefer oversteer or understeer? If you, like me, prefer heavier cars, or heavier in terms of steering that is, then I would recommend this one. If you prefer to have more of a loose steering rack, but the payoff being a little bit more twitchiness, a little bit more slipperiness, then I would recommend the premium. Now, obviously, most people, despite this review, would probably still choose the premium if you had the option, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It feels probably just about as quick around the track. I'm not sure if there would be a difference between the two. I haven't actually straight up compared them, but I feel like they would be fairly similar. The premium might even have the edge. But if you're looking purely for the better deal, the better value deal, and the better bang for buck, then this is quite simply the better car. More power for 40 grand less is a significant advantage. And as I mentioned earlier, the biggest advantage of all, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that it has more power and a better price, but also at a lower PP level. And the reason why I would say that that is probably the most important point of all is because having essentially the same performance at that much lower a point is a big advantage to have. It means that, say you had to round it off to 525 pp or even 500, you'd have to remove and restrict the premium version far more than you would with this car. So overall, I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying this one instead of the Premium, but if you already have the Premium and fancy trying a very interesting alternative to it, and certainly not an expected one, then you might want to give this car a look. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.